Floyd Shivambu was lambasted for speaking out against Treasury Deputy Director General Ismail Momoniat in a move that was criticized as racist. And the Democratic Alliance remains embroiled in a never-ending saga against Cape Town Mayor Patricia De Lille. So with presumably maybe even less than a year before the next general election, how much are the country's biggest political parties scoring own goals? We're joined now by political analyst Ralph Mathekga, who's joining us in the studio for a discussion. Good evening to you as always, and thank you for talking to us.
Good evening, Bonga.
So let's just start with this. I mean, I've outlined the difficulties that certainly the three biggest parties are facing. Are these own goals, or is it part of the cleanup as they all prepare for next year?
I think that there is a major repositioning among the big political parties. The DA has to position itself in relation to the ANC, the new leadership of the ANC, and also the new leadership of the ANC has to reposition itself in relation to the opposition generally within the country. And of course, there are instances of own goals as these parties are right-sizing each other going into elections. I think also that it took a while since Ramaphosa came in for the opposition to actually find a way as to what kind of opposition branding are they going to push, what kind of, how different is it going to be compared to what has happened under President Jacob Zuma's administration. So I do think that all of this add to the anxiety that all political parties, and it's not just the ANC, it's not just the opposition, I think major political parties in South Africa are experiencing this anxiety heading into 2019 elections.
Well, you talk about the former president. Let's talk about him for a second. I mean, he remains a figure that casts a long shadow, particularly over KZN. He is threatening to expose wrongdoing. I mean, surely he's always had not only a moral but a legal obligation to do so.
He had, of course. What he's actually saying is that maybe he knows more that he should have spoken about or that he should have allowed investigations into, and now the only way that he's willing to speak is when he's pushing against his own corruption trial. And for me, these are just blackmails, these are just threats. And I think as a nation, maybe we are beyond that. Why can't he just go out there and say what he needs to say? If there is anything to say at all, it's not going to help to stop this trial, I think.
So what happens to the ANC in KZN now? I mean, there's a real prospect of them running out of time. We know that in the Zuma years, that's where the ANC gained most of its support, where it was in decline elsewhere. Can it afford further damage in that province ahead of a general election?
Well, they can't. I mean, mathematically, KZN has the highest number of ANC membership, the highest when it comes to the population proportion when you add nationally. So they need to get a coherent leadership in KZN in order to go into the election. But the question of KZN, Bongani, is very complex if you look at it actually. It's not just about problems only in KZN where there are factions in KZN. It's about KZN becoming a center stage where even some leaders who are under siege in other provinces are coming to KZN to be part of the mutiny to challenge the national leadership of the ANC. We have seen the former Northwest Premier Supra Mahomapelo in KZN as well. You ask yourself, who is next? Who else will be under siege, will be looking at KZN as a strategic center of trying to challenge the national leadership of the ANC? It goes beyond the borders of the province, and the ANC need to be very careful to make sure that you don't have multiplication of KZN all over the country.
But of course, the other thing that's been discussed a lot is this planned fight back. Jacob Zuma's hand is being seen behind everything that we've seen, and he's getting by with a little help from his friends. What we've seen people like Carl Niehaus, Faith Mutambi, Hlaudi Mutsoneng, even now, of course, Supra Mahomapelo. What a more scandalous list of friends you might battle to find?
It is indeed, and I think that the national leadership of the party is not being able to step up to that. I mean, President Jacob Zuma is a very experienced politician. He knows as well that there is no coherence among the top six. He knows that they seem not to be standing in one voice. That is why he could actually be able to stage this comeback. And for him, the objectives are very narrow. It's all about surviving this corruption trial. He has tried for many years. He failed to push back. He needs that politics to push against that. And the national leadership leadership need to be able to be on the ground in KZN and deal with these divisions.
All right, let's talk about the other parties very quickly. Helen Zille, we're hearing now from the public protector, might need to face some consequence for her tweets. That surely might get Busisiwe Mkhwebane into trouble more than the Western Cape Premier.
It is going to appear quite personal, because Helen Zille also, she's reported to have stated that actually the findings by the public protector on that tweet are irrational and arbitrary. What that means is that she's going to go to court and ask that to be reviewed. The current public protector, unfortunately, has not done very well when her findings were being reviewed in court. So I would say that as much as Helen Zille is under pressure here, I think she's going to fight this on through a court review.
And the EFF, of course, last week, that was the big story as far as they were concerned. I mean, if we think about how some might say it's becoming more shrill in its racially laced rhetoric, is there fertile ground for that kind of message?
I think that they are trying to push this what we can call petty politics, not really about the issues going to the personalities. I mean, what they got themselves involved in relation to Momoniat, I mean, it's quite sad. Some of us, personally, I worked at Treasury. I've known Momoniat at Treasury. I've known officials at Treasury. I have not seen what I think is what they're actually talking about. There are black leaders within Treasury at Deputy Director General level and so forth. And I think that, unfortunately, the EFF seems to be a party that is pushing petty racial politics. They need to rise above that, because I think at this point they are a very important factor in South African politics. They need to step up to it.
Well, it's all part of the game of politics, and things are certainly going to heat up in the coming months. Ralph Mathekga, thank you very much for your analysis this evening. All right, we've got more news and analysis for you after this.